welcome to Storyboard. This is Shibani Gharat. While watching your favorite show on television, listening to radio, reading a newspaper, or simply navigating through social media platforms, we occasionally get interrupted by ads from different brands. Some of the ads leave us compelled to go and grab that product, while some others make us wonder whether the tall claims made by the brands are in fact true or false. Interestingly, advertising, they say, is a mix of art and fact. Our Constitution provides us with the fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression, and advertising is well within the ambit of fundamental rights, considering that it is a way to express and reach out to public at large, be it print or audiovisual media. But with each passing day, we see an increase in the number of misleading ads on various media platforms. In fact, a couple of months back, MIB claimed a massive jump in misleading ads on TV over the last 3 years. To speak more on misleading ads and its impact, we have a panel of experts with us today in the studio, including Paritosh Joshi, who's a member of board of the Advertising Standards Council of India. Along with him, we also have N. Chandramouli, CEO TRA, and Alpana Parida, Managing Director of the brand strategist DY Works. And together, we're going to discuss the impact of misleading ads on brands and consumer perception of the brands. All of you, welcome to Storyboard. Let me begin with Paritosh. Paritosh, what exactly comprises of a misleading ad?
Okay, in our code, we actually talk about false and misleading. The idea being that you can have a patent untruth, which is not true at all, or you can have a half-truth, which appears to be sort of a bigger claim than it really intends to be. And in many ways, a misleading claim is even more dodgy than a completely outright false claim, because it is possible to vaguely argue that there is some part of it which is true. A lot of categories that we deal with routinely, healthcare is a big one, education is another one. Of course, FMCG, both goods and services, routinely show up. Now, in education, let me take you an example of education specifically. Professional education in India is highly desired by parents as well as kids when they are getting into university. And there are a lot of colleges now which work purely on a commercial basis, so they don't have anything to do with your grades. If you're willing to pay lakhs of rupees, they will admit you. Their advertising will always talk up their placement record. Their advertising will always talk up the facilities that they offer. And very, very often, the facilities that actually exist when you go there are nothing like what the brochure promised or the advertising promised. And this can have serious economic consequences, but it also has serious psychological consequences. We know in this country, thanks to cities like Kota, there is like an industrial scale on which kids are prepared for competitive exams. And we also know that a lot of those kids get into serious psychological problems, including attempting suicide.
But apart from the education ads or the healthcare ads, there are these popular regular consumer brands like your Colgates of the world, or let's say even HUL, P&G. They feature on the ASCII list month after month, especially the likes of Patanjali. Chandramouli, you come up with brand trust report every year. What is the kind of impact of these misleading ads on the consumer mindset and consumer perception about that particular brand?
So essentially, a consumer starts off with trust. So he has a lot of trust. He considers anything that is large and anything that's talking to a lot of people, and therefore consumers, they trust them intrinsically. So therefore, when a brand changes its talk, at that time, the consumer is bound to believe, because if he doesn't, then his trust makeup of the entire world will break down. Almost like when you break up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, your trust makeup of the entire world changes. So when a trusted brand breaks your trust, you feel disturbed internally. But the whole aspect of what happens to a consumer is that the consumer is taken in by anything that a brand is saying. So if a brand is at the counter end, it's trying to sell. So it's going to inflate its claims. And the claims are going to be at borderline. At least in the, as Paritosh said, in the healthcare, technical healthcare field, prescribed healthcare field, you have the Magic Remedies Act. If you claim magic remedies, like alopecia or if it's to do with cancer, they will come down and kind of close you. But in the borderline areas, which is talking to the consumer, there is nothing. There is absolutely nothing. So therefore, when you look at these things and you just bring it down from magic remedies to product, and you overclaim of that, is no worse than what the Medical Magic Remedies Act tries to do.
But what about brands taking dig at each other? Let's say in an era of, a handy Google on your phone, do you think something like the detergent wars that we saw in the 90s or the 2000s, do you think, they really have an impact or a sizable impact on the consumer mindset? Let's say one toothpaste brand claims to have, to give you whiter teeth as compared to the other. Does it really have an impact on the consumer mindset, Alpana?
Yeah, sure, it does to some extent. It usually reinforces, it doesn't really cause conversions, but it usually reinforces the consumer's belief that's already there. It's not enough to cause conversion to a new brand. Nonetheless, I think a lot of times what tends to happen is when consumers believe it's not just misleading advertising, sometimes it's misleading categories entirely. So, for example, you can look at a lot of surrogate advertising, right? Liquor is a category that's rampant with it. It's something that you see across the board. And consumers buy into that story of that brand, regardless of what category it is. Legally, they're not supposed to advertise. So this sort of fine, line that brands seem to traverse, often it's not just taking digs at each other, but reaching out to consumers at really the consumer's cost.
Okay. This year in mid-December, the Consumer Protection Bill was passed in Lok Sabha. What is the kind of impact that it will have on a body like ASCI? Because there are a lot of things that, a brand or a manufacturer will be held accountable for. What will be the impact on ASCI, the larger impact on ASCI?
ASCI has been a partner with many ministries and with the establishment in terms of the administration in all matters related to communication, in many specific departments as well. Now, what this does is it creates new penal provisions that the government can act on. Some of them will have a secondary impact on advertising. So, for example, anybody who wishes to give a brand testimonial or wants to be an endorser for a brand will be taking on certain obligations as a result of this act once it gets implemented. So they'll have to gazette it and then it'll have to be enforced. Of course, my anxiety, I must be honest about this, is that in India we make haste to legislate, but we don't make that much haste to enforce. So my sense will be that, it will have perhaps, particularly on brands and brand owners, a salutary effect of saying that let's not do something which, gets into the criminal zone of this legislation. So what one is hoping is that it will, ensure that there is a sort of a legal coercion on the minds of advertisers that causes them not to do the most profligate kind of things. That being said, I think the larger issue of any legislation or any government action which is in the favor of the consumer and in the interest of protecting the interests of the consumer, if it gets amplified, I mean, if there is a campaign by the government to ensure that people hear about this and read about it, then it works well for us because we as a self-regulatory body are happy with anything that protects the consumer's interest. So if this happens, then, it will have a sort of a secondary rub-off effect on the activities of organizations such as ASCI, because it just generically increases the awareness of the consumer.
So, are you suggesting that lack of onus on the part of the consumer when it comes to misleading ads is the biggest problem?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we call ourselves an SRO, a self-regulatory organization. A self-regulatory organization places responsibilities on everybody. The entire value chain, starting from the manufacturer, through the advertiser, through the media, all the way to the consumer. All of us act as, let's say, the eyes and the ears, and eventually the spokesperson of combating anything which looks dodgy or which looks debatable. All right. So everybody in a self-regulatory system takes some responsibility for saying that I will stop it at source, or if not at the source, by the time it arrives, I will stop it early, right, before it has too many deleterious effects. So our sense is that anything which amplifies this awareness or this consciousness is generally good, and therefore it is good for the causes that ASCI works.
Okay. Also in the Consumer Protection Bill, which was passed in December, it brings all the brand endorsers under its ambit. So what do you think about that? Do you think brand endorsers, Chandramouli, should be held responsible for the kind of ads that they do or misleading ads that they do?
Up to a point. So I don't think they should be generically made accountable for everything that they endorse. A toothbrush need not, a toothpaste may. A luggage may not, but a malt drink which helps kids grow may. It's a nutritional product. So I think there must be a limitation so that there is a balance between what the endorsers want to do within their limited time frame of what they can actually extract most of their value, so to speak, and what brands want to do, which is to use them. And truly speaking, the consumer also wants to see the endorser there. That's his icon or her icon. So they want to see them, then they feel better about a brand, they feel better about themselves. Brands are reflections of their own personality, so therefore they see that in the same light. But the most important part is that if you try to do it for everything, if you try to make the endorser responsible for everything, you will break the chain entirely. So you will have, like I said, you and me probably, endorsing brands, which won't help. Nobody's going to buy them. But most importantly, what you need to do is to have a middle line saying that if it impacts health, if it impacts certain issues which are going to take care, for children, for example, food items, for example, does matter, where they should be made very seriously responsible and they should go through the product testing. But if a person says, I'm going to have Melody chocolates, that's fine, as long as you don't say it has nutritional value. But you'd be surprised that quality walls in their advertising, in their web page, says that it's highly nutritional. So there are claims like that are going just unnoticed because it's not advertised, but it's being claimed. So therefore, there is a need for everybody to actually look at this, and probably aspects like ASCII will help in that. But I do think that we also have an association which we are forming now called RNA, which is Responsible Nutrition Association, along with the FSSAI, wherein the similar things as ASCII, but not the same. It's not into advertising, but the claims made, we're going to test it nutritionally. And there's an entire, it's along with NIN, which is the Nutritional India, it's the largest body in nutrition over here. So we're trying to bring in responsibility in nutrition.
Do you agree with Chandramouli? Because, in the wake of the Maggi controversy, everyone was blaming the endorsers for endorsing the product, including Amitabh Bachchan, including Madhuri Dixit. And, endorsers on the other hand said that, hey, we just say whatever the brand tells us. We actually don't go into the factory to test the product, or we don't actually go to a testing lab to test what the product is like. So do you agree with Chandramouli in this regard?
So I agree that endorsers cannot by themselves know genuinely what's the nutritional value of the products, because they're not R&D people, they're not scientists themselves. Nonetheless, I don't agree that it's their right to become endorsers for products they don't understand, and that they're actors in or they're sports people, or they're luminaries in any other field. If they don't understand the product, even if it is luggage, for example, it doesn't harm anybody, but you're really exhorting consumers to pay a premium for a product which might well be the same quality or poorer quality than something else. So to that extent, I don't really see the necessity for endorsers to endorse something, especially when what they're endorsing is something they genuinely have no belief in, and they're simply acting.
All right, on this note, it is time for us to slip into a short break. This discussion will continue. You don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Storyboard, and we are discussing misleading ads and its impact on the consumers and the brands. And with us in the studio is Paritosh Joshi, N. Chandramouli, and Alpana Parida. Welcome back, all of you. Paritosh, this is the election year. 2019 is our general election year. Do you think political ads should be brought under the ASCII purview?
I'm going to take the official view on this because, quite honestly, I represent ASCII here. ASCII from the beginning has chosen to exclude government advertising and exclude all political advertising from its remit. So that's what our Articles of Association says, that's what the preamble to the code says. So while there have been vigorous conversations internally at various forums of the ASCII about should we incorporate them, there are very practical issues there. Very often the nature of political and government advertising is in terms of creating impressions and perceptions. All right, what we are interested in, fact and verifiability and stuff like that. So the problem is that when you're talking about the future, when you're talking about what happens 10 years from now, we are in no position to verify what will happen 10 years from now. So therefore, Advertising Standards Council has chosen to stay out of the way of political and government advertising, and that's the situation today. And I think as an ASCII person, I believe is the right thing to do.
But why not? Modi is a brand. Rahul Gandhi is a brand, the kind of spends that we're going to see in the next couple of months in the print media, on radio, on television is going to be humongous. Several hundreds and thousands of crores are going to be spent over the next few months till the election date, probably till 1 month till the election date. So why not bring the political parties under the ASCII purview or any of the regulations for misleading ads? Alpana, what do you think?
It should be, but it's a very difficult thing. If you look at the Election Commission of India, a body such as that, for example, might well play this role. Very, very difficult to ascertain what is fact, what is fake news, what is social media, somebody just talking. And therefore, being able to walk the fine line and say, yes, this is correct and this is not, is going to be really, really hard to do. When it comes to politics, our democracy has functioned fantastically, and if it's somebody is misled this year, at the next elections, we have always made sure that we are not misled any further, at least for that election. And so I think we can trust the democratic process of India to take care of things like this. Because
also, Chandramouli, you come up with trust report every year. What is the kind of impact of tall claims of these political ads and tall claims on social media platforms by these politicians on their trust factor?
So it's huge actually, because as I said, intrinsically humans are trusting. They would trust a community. They want to be in a community that you trust. Otherwise, you're not a part of the community. And of course, law, governance, policing, everything depends on trust. Otherwise, there is none of these that happen. But as each claim is made, and people get misleaded easily, and if at all, what you said, Alpana, is about next elections, that's 5 years from now. That's 1/10 of my life, or 1/15 of my life. So I cannot take that risk, and therefore anything that is going to be in the biggest, what ASCII is doing is great, but that's just brands. This is about 5 years of our lives, and therefore it needs to be governed, and therefore there should be a body that's perhaps much bigger than all these put together, the level of a CAG, something like that, which audits every advertising done, even after 5 years, doesn't matter, and punishes a particular party which has made false claims at that point or later.
I think what you said about reprimand, I think it needs to be punitive action.
Yes,
and I agree entirely, whether it's brands or whether it's political parties. If there is strong punitive action, at this point there is none. So even if the ASCII actually takes action and sends a letter to them asking them to withdraw their advertising, that's probably the best they do, or they modify it somewhat, by which time they've already run the course. People have seen the ad and its influence has already occurred. So unless, when you look at class action suits internationally and so on, there are awards which are given in millions of dollars and so on. And that's really when brands become much more self-policing.
May I add one thing for ASCII's case here, really, really positive. So what you said, Alpana, may be partly true, because I deal with brands, we give them India's most trusted or India's most attractiveness based on our reports. And many times, false claims are taken so seriously once you put in a letter. This is like the biggest of brands. They will immediately stand to caution, and everybody gets into line.
Yeah, but the letter, as she said, comes in a month later. By the time the ad has already been played on television. So how can that change, really? How can the process or the time
be faster, maybe?
Be faster?
We have actually, the loop that we used to have 10, 12 years ago, and the loop that we have now is much tighter. So previously, the cycle time was like 2 months. A dozen years back, the cycle time was 2 months. It's down to about 3 weeks. But Alpana is right, that very, very often the period of a media flight is less than that. So by the time we see the complaint and by the time we say, stop this advertising, that campaign's gone on, stopped anyway.
But you can't fine them? You can't put a fine on them?
That, because we are not a judicial body, right? We are a self-regulatory organization. So we can't penalize, we can't send you a bill. But it's been a very real issue. So the way that we've tried to control it is by accelerating the process. We have a special dispensation. So there are specific instances when something is so outrageous that, in a sense, we take suo motu action instantly. There was a campaign, I remember, of a particular watch brand where the ad featured a woman whose solitary item of clothing was sellotape.
Oh, thank God.
She'd been taped up, literally, right? And it was overtly, the entire intent was sexual. There was, it was objectification of the worst sort.
No, but is that under ASCII's code?
It is, absolutely, right? So we saw it, some members of the CCC saw it, some members of the board saw it, we alerted each other, the company was advised that this needs to be taken down. Now, this kind of suo motu action is not something that ASCII is generally programmed to do, but sometimes things do happen which are so outrageous that we have a mechanism within ASCII at this time to act. So, the CCC and the board quickly consult, it's over the telephone, and we let them know.
So, but globally we have seen cases where, the likes of Red Bull have been fined for saying that, you guys don't give us wings, or New Balance for, this increases your speed. So, they have had to pay the fine. But in India, the likes of Patanjali, they say that, we don't believe in ASCII and this is all big corporate chal. Big players are, plotting against us. The likes of HUL and PNG are plotting against us. So how do you change that? How can you change that mindset, and how can you change this brand behavior?
Shivani, the self-regulatory organization by definition is about moral suasion, right? We are not coercive. We are meant to be persuasive, right? The whole mechanism is meant to be a suasive mechanism rather than a coercive mechanism. And most people fall in line. I mean, I'm actually delighted to tell you that compliance with ASCII's rulings is north of 95%, right? So if we rule on a particular piece of advertising 95% times or better, it gets taken down, right? So it does work. Now, the problem is that when you are a large FMCG business, as all the names that you just mentioned are, they have hundreds of variants of dozens of brands and literally 1,000 creatives coming out every year. They are putting into place, I know because we hear about it, they put into place internal mechanisms to ensure that everything is, passed through several sieves and filters before it goes out. Do things slip through? Yes, they do. The point that you make, that everybody is interested in the commercial objective. People want to sell.
There's one point here too, the very fact that when you look at it from the borderline, am I going to test the border of the law? That's what most brands are doing. They go to the threshold and say, okay, I have, let's say, XYZ noodles, and my nutritional facts are on the crimp, which is already crimped up. I can't read it, nothing happens, but my high iron makes you stronger is right in the middle.
On the front
so this is the borderline case. You say, okay, I can test the law here. Every brand, I can guarantee, is testing the law. And this is not to do with self-regulation training, it's to do with this basic sense of I want more to sell, I want more consumers, this mad anxiety that every brand has to just have it more consumed.
Let's say any other brand from an HUL or any other brand from PNG. Probably they must be there in the August report. They might not feature in the September report. They are there in the October report. Again, they are there in the December report. Like, they are regular defaulters. Like, it's not that, it's one of that, let's say HUL is made accountable, or it's not a one of that, let's say a Hyundai is.
They're testing the boundaries of commerce.
When can brands exactly stop doing that?
I don't think brands, their self-interest, as you said, Chandramouli, of growth is so high that I don't think they're really interested in, and they're really at the boundary. Punitive action is the only thing that will stop it. And I think it's time we looked at that when actually brands really cross and push the boundary so much and they become repeated offenders.
Okay.
There must be repeat offenders. That's a very important thing, because first time offenders.
These are all repeat offenders.
Yeah, and they should be taken to task, without a doubt.
So what's the solution?
Yeah, okay. Speaking for ASCII, we have actually talked about this as well. That, do you treat repeat offenders in a different way? I mean, can you, for example, impose a penalty like you will not advertise of any sort for the next so many months? Now, the problem is that this flies contrary to the nature of a self-regulatory organization, right? We are not in the business of censorship. We are a reactive and not a proactive entity. The proactivity is in saying that don't let it come out at all. Filter it inside your organization. Once the advertising has come out, we are not censors, right? We have to wait for somebody to say that this is offensive, or our own internal suo motu system to pick it up.
But you could also have a system of saying next 2 months pass it through us. Something like that. It doesn't have to be that
but the
extreme.
thing is that, a self-regulatory organization is not really designed to be a censor. Okay. We are not designed to be a censor, and we have no intention of becoming one.
More for
but
compliance,
the issues are real. The issues are issues that the CCC and the board and, every other forum of ASCII, including in our EGM, we discuss every year. And, it's easy enough to talk about it, but, what can I say? It's not new issues. These are issues that, chronic offending has been happening for years now, and they don't lend themselves to any easy solutions, right?
But they won't also. This is commerce.
They do not.
This is money.
So there will be, here's what we do. We believe that there is a time in which there's an escalation matrix, that there are certain things. For example, in the case of many healthcare related products or education related issues, we escalate it to the ministries. We say that, listen, this is the wrong forum, this forum is not able to deal with it, let me hand it over to somebody who can. So we also act as a routing agency. When we believe that we cannot fully deal with the problem, we
But the government acts on such things?
Yes, they do. Oh. Yes, they do.
All right. All of you, thank you so much. Thanks for speaking to us. So there needs to be more initiative on part of the consumer to hold these brands accountable. With that, it's a wrap on Storyboard this week. You can catch all of our content on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Thanks for watching and we'll be back same time next week. See you soon.